understanding of communication, I think that's a really hard question, which sounds like a really easy question, but when I think of it, it's actually a really hard question. I think communication is about interaction, it's about understanding, it's about joining with each other. Like if we think about the purpose of communication for humans, it's about sharing needs, sharing joy. So I think it is about how we join with others and live in community. I'm a social worker and I work as a counsellor, and so there's two parts of my work. One is to do therapy with people with complex trauma disorders, and the other part is to do assessments of families that come before the Children's Court. Communication is central and key to how I work, because without that there is no work. So it's about the interactions that happen as we unpack the stories of people's lives so that I can help them either make sense of things or make changes in their world that make their lives a little bit better. And if there's no communication, that doesn't happen. I think that the verbal communication is the most common. However, the non-verbal I think is really important in my clinical work, in my counselling. Most of my clients are very good at picking up the subtle nuances of non-verbal. So if I'm having a bad day, or if I'm tired, or if I do this, my clients will pick that up and want to know what's going on. I think that active listening is really important, and that if you're not listening to someone, you're not communicating with them, because it's a two-way process. So active listening, if you don't do that, then you're not actually communicating. You're only in your own head, and that's not communication. The thing that's really important with communication is attentive attuning. So you need to be really attuned to someone so that you're noticing what's going on for them on an emotional level, as well as in what they're saying. So it might be about the way they breathe, or it might be that they do a particular thing, when they're not feeling okay, or whatever that is. So you have to be actively listening and watching, and really tuning in to what's going on in the communication. This is the relationship that exists here, that is where the communication happens. Sometimes it's difficult to detach myself from people as a professional. Sometimes it's easy to fall into more of a gut feeling, and if you move out of your head too much, you forget your learning. And so if we think about when we're most likely to access what we know, theories we've learned or things we've picked up along the way, when we're in a relatively calm emotional state. So if I become too emotionally connected, I'm no good to my clients. But having said that, if I'm completely detached and don't respond to their stories in a human way, I'm no good to my clients. So you have to find a middle ground. I work and live in a very small town. There's only about 3,000 or 4,000 people who live here full time. And so most of us know each other, or know of someone who knows someone. And so so often juggling that client confidentiality is a bit of an issue. So there are professional ethics and boundaries that govern dual relationships and that kind of stuff. That's important too. Trust is a really big issue because my clients have been really horribly abused, and so people who they should have been able to trust to care for them haven't. And so it's an earned thing. It doesn't ever come naturally. My knowledge of communication has changed very much over my career. What I learnt in uni 24 years ago, I think it forms the basis in terms of the types of questions to ask, and asking open questions, using paraphrasing and reflecting back, and those kinds of basic things that you do, and about your body language, and obviously don't go into sitting like this and that kind of stuff. Developing theories, putting it into practice, looking at constantly learning, constantly adding to the toolkit of what works for people in terms of communication. As a social worker, the only tool I have of my trade is me. And so if I can't work out how to effectively communicate, I can't do my job. Communication in my field as a counsellor, I think is heading in a really interesting direction in terms of what technology can offer. You can't go from young to Ningen, it's crazy. So they're using things like Skype and like teleconferencing, and I think that is probably something for the future. think that when you sit with someone, you understand them in a different way than if you talk on the phone or you FaceTime or something, or Skype or something like that. I think it's a different kind of interaction when you're actually in the room with someone. And it is a two-way process. Then I think you're a good communicator. I think some people try to communicate, but they're really only interested in what their bit of it is, and it is the meeting in the middle.